By December 1945, the war was over, but in a small prison yard in northern Germany, the last act of Nazi cruelty was about to end with a rope. The sky over Hamelin was grey and heavy with fog. Inside the cold stone walls of the prison, the British had prepared 5 gallows. One of them waited for a young woman whose name had already become a symbol of evil. Her name was Irma Grese. She was 22 years old, blonde, blue-eyed and beautiful. But to the survivors of Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, she was not a girl. She was a monster. Prisoners had called her the hyena of Auschwitz and the beast of Belsen. And now she stood at the end of her life, about to pay for the horrors she had helped unleash. Irma Grese was born in 1923 in the small German village of Recken in Mecklenburg. Her childhood was marked by poverty, strict discipline and fear. Her father was a dairy worker and a devoted Nazi sympathizer. When Irma was 14, her mother took her own life after discovering her husband's infidelity. Irma withdrew completely, seeking purpose and authority in a world that had already hardened her. At 15, she joined the League of German Girls, the female branch of Hitler's youth. The uniform, the marches, and the sense of belonging gave her something she had never known: importance. When the war began, she tried to become a nurse, but was rejected. Instead, she volunteered for the SS Women's Auxiliary Service. She was 17. Her first posting was Ravensbrück, the notorious women's concentration camp north of Berlin. There she learned the mechanics of power, how to enforce discipline, how to issue orders, and how to punish without hesitation. Her superiors noticed her zeal. She was efficient, emotionless, and unafraid of violence. In 1942, she was transferred to Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest killing center of the Reich. She became an Aufseherin, a female overseer, responsible for thousands of women in the camp. Witnesses later said that she seemed to thrive on her authority. She wore a whip on her belt, a pistol at her side, and a cruel smile when prisoners stumbled before her. Those who survived remembered her beauty and her brutality. She beat women with her riding crop for the smallest infractions, set dogs on prisoners who collapsed, and personally selected victims for the gas chambers. She walked through the barracks in polished boots, accompanied by her dog, and enjoyed watching others suffer. She laughed when people cried. One survivor said it made her happy. By the time the Red Army closed in on Auschwitz in early 1945, Grese was transferred again, this time to Bergen-Belsen. It was the final stage of the Nazi system, where starvation, disease and chaos reigned. When the British liberated the camp on April 15th, they found over 10,000 unburied corpses and more than 60,000 survivors barely alive. Amid the wreckage, British soldiers discovered Irma Grese. She was calm, even cheerful, wearing a tailored uniform. She did not flee, did not fight, and did not hide. When asked for her name, she simply replied, Grese, Irma Grese. The soldiers placed her under arrest. They would soon learn who she was. In the months that followed, the world's attention turned to the Belsen trial, held in the German city of Lüneburg. 45 men and women stood accused of war crimes committed at Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. 11 were women. None drew more fascination or hatred than Irma Grese. When she entered the courtroom in September 1945, reporters whispered. She looked more like a movie actress than a war criminal, young, poised, unshaken. She smiled occasionally, even flirted with guards. Her composure unsettled everyone. The testimony, however, erased any trace of sympathy. Witness after witness described her sadism. One woman told how Grace beat a prisoner to death for stealing turnips. Another spoke of being whipped until she fainted. Survivors described her standing near the gas chambers, pointing at women to be sent inside. When asked if she denied these claims, Grese shrugged. "I had my orders," she said. "It was my duty." She never expressed remorse, not once. Even the presiding judge struggled to understand her. "Do you realize what you have done?" he asked. Grese replied, "The prisoners were difficult. Discipline was necessary." Her defense lawyer described her as naive, a simple girl who had fallen under the influence of stronger minds. But no one believed it. The evidence was too strong, her victims too many. On November 17, 1945, the verdicts were announced. 11 of the accused were sentenced to death by hanging. Among them, Elisabeth Volkenrath, Johanna Bormann, and Irma Grese. She was the youngest woman ever condemned for war crimes in modern history. In her cell at Hamelin prison, she awaited execution with an eerie calm. The British guards who watched her described her as polite, sometimes even cheerful. She sang German songs softly to herself and read from a small prayer book. When the prison chaplain asked if she sought forgiveness, she smiled faintly and said, "I am not afraid to die." The executioner assigned to her case was Albert Pierrepoint, Britain's most experienced hangman. He would later recall her final moments in his memoirs. "She walked to the scaffold with her head held high," he wrote. "She said only one word before the hood was placed, 'Schnell,' quickly." It was the morning of December 13th, 1945. The temperature was freezing. At 9:59, the guards opened her cell door. Irma Grese stepped forward, wearing a simple grey dress. Her hands were bound behind her. She refused the priest's arm and marched briskly into the execution chamber. Pierrepoint noted her composure. "She looked straight at me, her eyes bright," he wrote. There was no tremor, no tears. The rope was adjusted, the hood lowered. "Schnell," she whispered again. At precisely 10 minutes past 10, the trapdoor opened. Her body fell, then hung motionless. The world's youngest female war criminal was dead at 22. Outside, the British guards said nothing. There were no cheers, no shouts, only silence. For the survivors of Auschwitz and Belsen, her death brought no joy, only a cold sense of closure. In the days that followed, her body was buried in an unmarked grave in Hamelin, along with the other executed guards. No marker, no monument, only a number on a list. But her image lived on, in photographs, in testimonies, in nightmares. She became the embodiment of how ordinary cruelty can disguise itself behind youth and beauty. To the survivors, she remained the face of senseless evil, a reminder that wickedness needs neither age nor ideology, only obedience and indifference. Irma Grese believed she had done her duty. History remembers her differently. Her calmness at the gallows, her single word, "Schnell," have become symbols of the cold, mechanical cruelty of the Nazi regime. Her execution was swift, but her legacy was eternal. A warning of what happens when humanity is replaced by obedience, when conscience is silenced by power, and when a young woman chooses to serve death instead of life. History doesn't forget. It only waits to be retold. Subscribe for more untold stories from the darkest chapters of history.